Hi, everyone. This is Christina Barr, the host of Black Tea News. Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Today, I'm joined by a good friend, Brian Canty. He is going to be getting into podcasting and stuff soon, I hope. And he's very knowledgeable, a researcher of many things, including the random. And I thought it would be a treat to have his political knowledge on today as we continue talking about the border. Biden apparently fired the horses.
That's so. Oh my gosh, this is more concerned about imagery than actually efficiency of doing the job. It's just when you're more concerned about people's emotions or how people feel about. They're just more concerned about optics than anything. That's just all it really is.
That's true. So we're going to talk about that. Biden is getting into the booster shots and pushing it, which it's funny because he mentions who the boosters are for, 65 and up, and people with comorbidities and etc. But he doesn't explain why they're not recommending them for everyone. So we'll get to that as well, and some other things. But before we jump into it, I do want to thank Brighter Michigan PAC for allowing us to use the studio. Appreciate the space as always. They don't care if I say something that triggers you, and I certainly do not care. So there's no one to complain to. It doesn't work like that. I am my own boss. You just have to sit there and suffer. And I do also appreciate Brighter Michigan PAC. If you have not seen the music video that I put out yesterday, please go ahead and watch it. I put it on my social media. It was a Super Bass parody with Nicki Minaj. It's called Super Based, and I'm not going to play it because I don't want them to ding this broadcast. I'm a little surprised they didn't ding it on Facebook, though I can fight it anyway, but they're just really, really, I don't know, touchy about music. So, yeah, and even Tina was doing a stream one time, and she had free royalty-free music, and then they, like, muted her live. I'm like, you could have disputed this later because now her live is basically pointless because no one could hear her. So yeah, Facebook's a little weird. So I please encourage you all to go check it out. I put it on Twitter, I put it on TikTok, I put it on Facebook. So go ahead and share it. I got to still put it on Instagram, but it's really, really, I think it's really good. But I did film it here. You can't see this because this is a green screen. This is not a real American flag, but the studio has a really nice green screen, so I was able to shoot it here. So I do appreciate Brighter Michigan PAC for opportunity of doing that, and I do also appreciate Tina's Text Portraits, who also helped to sponsor that video. So please check out Tina's Text Portraits. A lot of great stuff there. So before I jump into everything, I do want to encourage you guys to go to blackteennews.com, check out the different merchandise that we have on the shop. With everything, there's inflation, and so I got a notification that some of the stuff was going to have to go up because of the suppliers, and I'm going to have to raise a little bit too. So before those prices set in, go get your shirt tonight. The prices are still a little cheaper. You can save $1 or $2. So go ahead and get yourself the GOAT hoodie while you can. At this price, it'll still be the same thing later and still worth getting, but I want to save you a couple dollars so you can get this cool GOAT hoodie. I don't have much. I think that it's going to change other than that, but we got the Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt with the list of racist stuff that he's done on the back of it. We got the I Am Not the Victim You're Looking For shirt that I'm very fond of. And you can check out other stuff that we have on the site. Well, let me show you the one I really, really like. The You Are Not That Special mugs. And we do have the shirts as well. So yeah, go to blackteennews.com. You can check out the merchandise. And if you would like to support, you like what I do here, you go to blackteennews.com/donate. There's a lot that's on the move with the show. I'm really, really excited about some upcoming things, but I would like to grow as fast as I can. And if you're able to support, I appreciate you guys. If you want to go that extra mile and leave a donation, so God bless you guys. And let's get started. So every show I like to start with something funny. So do you follow G Prime 85, George Alexopoulos? I'm sure you've seen some of his comics. So some of his art style. So here he has some aggressive police officers in Australia strangling a woman, and she's like, "Wait, why are you doing this?" He's like, "I'm here to save you. I'm saving you." So that is the state of affairs with in Australia.
Or wait, it's here too, man.
Quite not as it's not as bad as
It's not as
Australia.
bad, but
it's like
that's the direction.
that
it's
is
going.
the direction. God, I'm like, so a lot of people in the comments when they see something crazy going on with Australia, they're like, "This is why we have guns." And I see people pushing back, like you would shoot these people.
No, I don't think they would.
You know what? I
don't honestly believe they would.
I don't think so either.
Because the whole black, it's like, I'm not against the whole police lives matter thing, because all lives matter. But the same time is we as conservatives have the whole thing, which it seems like we overly back the law in a sense. I'm not sure how to articulate this very well, but it's like at some point there is a point where you should push back, and I don't know what that point is.
Yeah.
And nobody ever defines that point. So nobody's going to ever. So there's never going to be a consistent when that point is. So there will be. It's like there will be no point. Basically, it's just like the Black Panthers back in the day. This is from what I've heard and seen. Like they, regardless of what anybody thinks of them as a whole, like when the police would come out, they would have their guns and make sure the person getting arrested was getting arrested properly. Okay, and it's just it wasn't anything violent or anything like that, but they had their guns out ready to hold the police accountable.
Mm-hmm.
We just have a whole thing where we kind of trust the police, but don't trust the government, which doesn't make any kind of sense. But I'm not saying that the police are bad or even anything in and of the government is bad in and of itself, but it's just like the whole reason we have gun rights is really to protect ourselves from who? First of all, the police. And this is not anti-police. You could be pro-police and be pro-accountability at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's just you don't hear a lot of accountability on the conservative side on certain branches of the government. We'll just put it like that.
When something really blatant happens, it's
right.
People will come out and want accountability.
Right.
And we've seen that many times, including last year when everybody was up in arms and going crazy, even over things that were like, clearly the police were acting in a manner that they had no option but to, or like recently this year, where's that young lady who's going to stab another one?
Oh, Ma'Khia Bryant.
Yeah. And she was like, had a knife, was going down like this. And people are like, why didn't they tase her from that distance, from that speed? There was like,
no,
there was
no
like,
way.
There was no way. And people were still so angry, chanting Black Lives Matter and so on.
Yeah. There's like two extremes. It's like there's no point where the police can do the right thing with certain people. Mm-hmm. None. Like the Ma'Khia Bryant situation proved that. Like dude was literally about to stab him, and it was all like, well, the dude was had racial prejudice issues, because he can't use the other word. But and I was like, that's not the point. So what if even if he did, she was in danger?
Yeah.
Even if he shot her, because it doesn't really matter. The point is he saved her life, and there was no way he can get from that point, because I've like actually tried to cover that distance, and I'm not a slow person.
No, you're not.
So, I'm very light and small and very nimble. So I could cover that distance in that speed. You can't, it was no way he could do that. So, and people was just like, well, they was going to the race issue, and it was like, he didn't have to do that. And that just shows, some people, it's no matter what you do. And that's why a lot of good officers probably going to quit. There's nothing that the police can do that is right. And then on the other hand, there's some people, the police can't do no wrong either too. So, but I think the bigger problem right now is certain, how can I put this? It's just certain, like the way people are trying to undermine the institutions. It's not like they're trying to correctly challenge them like the civil rights movement did.
Yeah.
It's the way because they're trying to undermine it in a way to implement something that's way worse, which is, communism, which is never proved to be good in anywhere. So, in my assessment, so or some
No,
kind of
it's everyone's assessment who's honest.
or some kind of it may not be even full communism, but it'll be just some kind of totalitarian system that is like that. You know, it's just I don't know if you get into Bible prophecy here or not, but that
Not really.
But it just seems going in a direction that a lot of Christians fear. We'll put it like that.
Yeah. It's funny that there's people who hate Christians, like Christians want the world to end because they believe Jesus will come back. I'm like, nobody looks forward to the end like that. Like some people might get frustrated, be like, come back, Jesus. But no, nobody wants like the great tribulation. Nobody wants that.
Because the great tribulation means a lot of Christians are going to die.
Yeah, they were like when they were putting the embassy in Jerusalem, they're like, Christians just want the world to end. No. I remember my dad was talking about that when I was a kid, because no one knows the time, the day out or whatever. So he's like, it could happen in a couple of years. We all like, I'm sitting there crying on the bed. I'm like, I want to have a family. Like I want kids. You want kids to grow up in the great tribulation. I was like, I want a family. So we're freaking out because we don't know, and now that was what 20 years ago.
Yeah, there's a few things that have to happen before the tribulation happens, but I could say them if you want me to, but well, there's basically two signs in the Bible. There's one that the temple needs to be there. They need to be doing sacrifices. That's one, and then number two, there has to be a 10-king empire that's going to be in the Middle East. So without those things, there's not going to be any tribulation, because the tribulation, Jesus says, when you see the abomination, desolation, such shall be tribulation. And abomination, desolation is set up after animal sacrifices is set up, because that's what stops animal sacrifice. So if there's no animal sacrifice, there is not about to be a tribulation. I'm not saying when it could or could not happen, but it's not about to happen. But even if there is no tribulation, it could still be real bad without it being, just like in a lot of communist countries. I don't know if you ever heard Torture for Christ. That but like the stuff they had to go through in Marxist countries is brutal.
And you know what? Sometimes when I'll talk about Marxism stuff on like TikTok or something, which the population of people who come against me are like, their intellect is, well, some of them are kids. But I don't feel that's actually fair either, because I was not a dumb kid, so I don't know what to say. I don't know. I wish I was.
You know what? They're dumb. They're slow because of how they were trained.
That's true. That's true. Very true. I did one TikTok. I'm like, please stop embarrassing your parents on TikTok. But some of those parents, their parents probably embarrassing them too. But they'll say things like, oh, well, why should you even care? Because things are supposed to be worse or bad, or just Christians supposed to suffer. So why do you care how about bad things will get? Because it says that things will get worse and worse and worse. I'm just like, why? I'm not gonna just be okay with communism because.
First of all, that's a misunderstanding, because first of all, just because things are going to get worse as a whole up until the end doesn't mean it has to get worse every area all the time. Just like America's gotten better in a lot of things, like
worse in some, yeah.
Like we're no longer slaves.
Yeah.
So America's got, just because the world's going to get worse and worse, but there were some improvements along the way. And along that, it doesn't necessarily mean that the Antichrist is going to, like the Bible does, like the Antichrist in the Bible does not even set. We don't even know, like they talk about specific areas where he's not going to rule. So that doesn't mean he has to be here. But it's just like, that's just like a give up. That's just like, oh, you're going to die. Why do you care if you die now?
Yeah.
It's like, what? That's goofy. It's just like, oh, you can't take this to the grave, so you might as well not have it at all. Like how does that even make any sense? So
it doesn't, but that's what they do. That's the kind of stuff they say. Anything to protect their ideology. It's such a, the dumbest things they say every day. So that brings us to the border. We have an incredible crisis with the Haitians that, coming over, everyone anyway, period. But right now we have like a really big rise with the Haitians coming over, and this big lie that they decided to push. Now, New York Times, they pushed this lie, and it seems obviously, I don't know, they just wanted a fabricated news cycle to, I don't know, cover for Biden for other failures, whether it's they can't get their budget passed, infrastructure, because there's people fighting with the moderates and the progressives and Republicans and so on, they can't get their stuff straight, and inflation and Afghanistan. So at the border, I don't know, they fabric and just a tragic crisis going on there, period. But they're like, oh, the border control is whipping people. So in the New York Times, they ended up issuing a correction. An earlier version overstated what is known about the behavior of some Border Patrol agents on horseback while the agents waved their reins while pushing migrants back into the Rio Grande. The Times has not seen the conclusive evidence that migrants were struck with the reins. So that's the correction that they issued. And originally said the images of agents on horseback chasing and in some cases using the reins of their horses to strike at running migrants came as Mr. Biden's administration moved to forcefully round up and deport more than 2,000 of the 15,000 migrants who gathered in a makeshift camp at Del Rio, Texas. So they just literally made that story. Like
it's what they do. I told you this a while ago. A lie, it doesn't always. It's just supposed to. It serves a function. Like they just, as long as they get people to go along with the lie long enough, that's all they need.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. So
obviously, I mean, when they told the lie about Mitt Romney not paying his taxes, that was
They told a lot of lies. Like the whole. I mean, they told a lot like the Hunter Biden thing recently.
Oh yeah.
Like whole
NPR was flat out pretending like that story wasn't real. Like we're gonna talk about it because it's childish, silly. I'm pretty much paraphrasing their statement on it. Obviously a very true story. The social media websites wouldn't allow New York. They censored the oldest newspaper in the country.
The New York Post, wasn't it?
Yeah, New York Post. They had a very true story, and now they're talking about it, acknowledging it. But there was never any evidence that it wasn't. There was plenty of evidence to prove it was true. People who had access to the drive offered it to other
but it doesn't
journalists.
Matter. It doesn't matter. It's true now.
No,
they just wanted it to not be true then, and then make you look like a conspiracy theorist. And then when it's it comes out later, well, we already did what we were supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And they still think of you as a conspiracy theorist, even though you happen to be right. Now, some people will turn around, but it's so many people that believe in the mainstream media. It's a lot stronger than a lot of conservatives think it is.
Yeah.
It's a lot. They were downplaying it like the media lies. The media lies. It's like, yeah, but
people believe the lie.
It's you don't need a lot of people. You just need enough. And the fact that Biden, no matter if Biden were to run against Trump again, he still will win the popular vote, no matter what he does, because of the media. I guarantee you that. He will still win the popular vote. I promise you that. I promise you that. Because the media is going to have people, believe believe that he's worse, no matter what. He could do whatever he wants to. They're just going to have him he's just going to win the popular vote because a lot of people is going to believe the lie that he's better than Mr. T, no matter what Mr. T does.
There's so many crazy things. Like when Biden did the American Rescue Plan, and they started touting out the line that we were lifting millions of Americans out of poverty. Mm-hmm. I was arguing with someone online, and they just literally kept repeating that. I'm like word for word, and I'm like, are you a DNC intern? Like, what? That could be possible, but word for word, they just repeat what they say. Like, how have you been lifted out of poverty? What do you mean? Does that make any sense? That's just a line. They're just giving you a little bit here, but how's that lifting you out of poverty?
It's cope. I think it's like cope brainwashing, to be honest. It's like we've seen it in certain facets of the even the Christian community. There's some people that just believe certain things. It's like, why do you believe that? It's just you believe that against. Why do you even that doesn't make any sense? So it's just, it's not just brainwashing. Doesn't necessarily have to be religious and oriented, but this is like a religious brainwashing.
No, it definitely is. It definitely is. So they can say whatever they want with this border situation, and Biden. Well, let me play. I didn't play Maxine Waters and stuff she was saying last week when I was talking about this. But here's this.
I'm unhappy, and I'm not just unhappy with the cowboys who were running down Haitians and using their reins to whip them, I'm happy with the administration. We are following the Trump policy. He is the one that does not follow the Constitution and would not allow those seeking refuge to be able to petition to get into the country. What the hell are we doing here? What we witnessed takes us back hundreds of years. What we witnessed was worse than what we witnessed in slavery.
There was more, but I just
She said a whole lot of nothing, man.
she said
A
worse.
whole
She said
lot of nothing.
it's worse than what we witnessed with slavery. Maybe she means that in the sense that she obviously wasn't there back then, and so
They just
it's an incredible lie. But they know that they can say those things.
people eat that junk up, man, because it does have bad imagery. If you take it, does have bad imagery, but at the same time, they never answer this question. What's the alternative? You know what like how do you know your alternative is better? Like, at what point do we say no? They will never tell you at what point they'll say no. They'll just say, well, we're supposed to take this in. Well, at what point are we supposed to say no? Or is there a point we're supposed to say no? I mean, and why is that point better than any other point? It's just an empty gesture. That's what that problem I really have with this immigration argument. They're not gonna ever tell me at what point they'll say no.
Yeah. No, that's with a lot of things. Like I've been talking a lot consistently about abortion since the Heartbeat Texas bill, especially like on TikTok. And so many times people will comment and say, well, how many children have you adopted? How many foster kids have you taken in? So I've just started responding with, what is the correct answer that will make you suddenly pro-choice, pro-life?
But how's that a response? That's just like somebody, I'm abusing a kid, and then they say their response was like, how many kids have you adopted? What does that have to do with it being wrong? Like, you can't like that's gonna like that should like they okay with abusing your kid. They're okay with abusing their kids because it's okay for me to abuse my kids. I don't have kids, but it's okay for me to abuse my kids because you won't adopt them. That's I don't understand.
They keep saying, like, you worry about all these other people, which and people say orphanages, like there aren't like orphanages in the U.S. And foster care is like the government takes kids and they're like the ward of the state and their goal is to reunite people with their families in one form or another. And the average time that a kid may spend in foster care is like 2.5 years, something like that, which is a long period of time for someone not to be in a like normal home.
That's forever for a kid.
That is forever for a kid. But they act like they're all the other kids in the Orphan Annie and Mr. Warbrooks never showed up. Like, that's what they're talking like. And it's still no like, since you're arguing that other kids should be aborted because of those kids in foster care, are you saying that we should just go off the rest of them? I don't think, it doesn't make any sense. But the point is that there's not a right answer for them anyway. It's just a tactic to turn the conversation off of the babies, to turn it back on you and what you're doing. Like, you're not a good person. So we're going to ignore like us advocating for the death of babies because you're not a good person. That's their tactic. They're like, what have you done? I'm like, well, I've literally like gone overseas in mission work and literally given supplies in orphanages. Like, but that's not, guys don't care about that kind of stuff. You just want to promote your ideas and just blame everyone else. If I don't support your liberal wish list of Medicare for all or forced mandatory parental paid leave, and like someone brought up like, how, do you care about gay rights? I'm like, what does that got to do with the babies? The babies ain't gay, they just babies.
It's just
like, I'm serious.
It's intellect. I guess it's more like their intellect. Some people are the intellectually weak will fall for those ad hominem attacks. That's what you call them.
Mm-hmm.
When they just attack the person instead of the art and dealing with the argument. That's for the intellectually weak. Like that's what we've created in our school systems is intellectually weak people. There's no critical thinking classes. I never took a critical thinking class when I was in high school. Critical thinking is a skill, and people need to be trained in it.
Mm-hmm.
Need to know how to analyze their own positions and analyze things to see what's true or not. And part of critical thinking class should be analyzing propaganda, but they don't teach none of that in school. So people fall for this stuff hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
They teach people to be critical of thinking, but not critical thinking. But they're not critical thinkers.
Yeah, I have actually literally seen like people I was on Twitter one time and someone asked that question, like, how many children have you adopted? And they were talking to somebody else and said, well, I've adopted 2 children. Like, how come you didn't adopt more? So there is no right answer.
There is no right answer.
There is no right answer. And so people don't usually have a return comment to that sort of comment. Or now I'll just say when they start doing their list of all the ways I'm not pro-life or something like that, I'm like, okay, why don't you just start off with what limitations you place on abortion? Like when they go to worst case scenario, like, what if an 11-year-old was raped by their toothless uncle or something like that? Right. And I'll say, well, what parameters or bans would you place on abortion? What kind of limitations would you accept? And some of them will say none. I mean, they don't want any sort of. I'm like, so why are you jumping to the less than 1% or whatever?
So it's not about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with that. You just don't want any limitations. So you just literally will kill a baby up until the time where they're supposed to be born. Like you would probably kill a baby right after the babies come out. With some people, like, remember that dude that was on I think it was Georgia or whatever. I think it might have been Georgia, where he was just talking about, well, we'll consult the
no, that was Northam. That was the blackface or Klan. We're not sure.
You see, and the problem was people got more mad at the blackface than they did about that statement.
Yeah.
They got more mad about the blackface than they did when he talked about people giving birth to a baby and then talk to their doctor whether or not they want to execute it now that they gave birth.
Yeah. You are correct. And then the mainstream media just didn't really talk about it until like Republicans are talking about it. They're like, Republicans pounce, and that's how they'll frame stories instead of like they'll cover it how Republicans respond rather than the actual story.
It's a psyop. It's like it's psychological warfare. That's what it is. It's psychological warfare. It's just to get people in their emotions, and when people are in their emotions, they can't think well.
Yeah, they definitely don't, especially with the border situation. So which we know is worse than slavery. Even though they weren't whipping people with reins. Those are split reins. You would not whip people like that. You would not use that to whip people. Like, was he supposed to grow a third arm and catch somebody?
That's
like.
But you know what? I don't think
there's a photo. Well, first of all, I got to say, why does he have carry out? That's the picture they're saying that got around. I want to go on to see Brian's face.
That's so ignorant.
Where
did they get that from?
So I don't know. So if everyone's just like, where did he get that from? That is so funny.
He got food in both hands.
Both hands.
I mean, that do look bad, but I think it first lit up amongst.
He wasn't scared enough to drop his food. He wasn't scared enough to drop his food. Oh my gosh. I wonder what was in them containers. I did a story about that on TikTok, and I didn't mention the containers because I didn't want to kind of change the tone of the story. But there's so many comments like, we're really not going to talk about the containers. Like, what's in the containers? So this is a pressing question. Perhaps that's something that we need to ask Jen Psaki. She'll circle back with us on it. But yeah. So Joe Biden came out and talked about this when he was asked about it at a press conference. And he said he's going to make these guys pay.
You said on the campaign trail that you were going to restore the moral standing of the U.S., that you were going to immediately end Trump's assault on the dignity of immigrant communities. Given what we saw at the border this week, have you failed in that promise? And this is happening under your watch. Do you take responsibility for the chaos that's unfolding?
Of course I take responsibility. I'm president, but it was horrible what to see, as you saw. To see people treated like they did, horses barely running them over, people being strapped. It's outrageous. I promise you, those people will pay. They will be, an investigation underway now, and there will be consequences. There will be consequences. It's an embarrassment, but it's beyond an embarrassment. It's dangerous. It's wrong. It sends the wrong message around the world. It sends the wrong message at home. It's simply not who we are.
What message was wrong that we were sending?
I don't know. I don't know. So he's not stupid. He's not stupid, but he's so, like you said, they're so willing to play into a narrative rather than to actually lead.
It's here's the thing. The narrative controls the politicians. It's not the politicians that control the narrative. It's not. Remember when Whitmore banned the malaria drug here?
Yeah.
Remember when she did that in response to the media?
Yeah.
It had nothing. It wasn't like the media was validating her or anything like that for doing it, but she did that in response to the media. A lot of these politicians aren't as, we'll just say, progressive as certain. We'll just say aren't as progressive. I think a lot of them are a little bit more. They're going more progressive because the narrative is going more progressive. Just like
Yeah.
the whole border, enforcing the border being anti-Mexican or whatever. They didn't care about that until the media started weaponizing that against Trump, and then the politicians started using that.
Yeah, because a lot of people had strong border policies, or talk like Hillary Clinton some years prior. You know, everybody.
Hillary and Obama,
Yeah.
and
Her running mate was it Tim Kaine?
I don't remember.
Said that
I don't even remember
some
now.
years ago. Said we should charge illegal immigrants to build the wall.
But it's there. The media does control. It's not like puppet master control, but they follow. I mean, what I mean by that is they follow a lot of these politicians. They follow the media, and I'm not even talking about just Democrats either. Some Republicans, because the media talk is like with Republicans are like Democrat light kind of thing. So sometimes like what was Republican now is probably what was Democrat some years ago, but they just follow the media. That's honestly what I believe. That's honestly what I believe. So when the media says something, they follow suit with that. And the media kind of is pro-establishment. It's kind of weird. It's kind of like the media is pro-establishment, but yet the pro-establishment kind of follows the media. But when they can get away with not going what the media says, they'll probably vote against them in secret. I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's really weird.
Yeah, it's kind of like. Did you ever see Mean Girls?
That was years ago.
You know the scene when they're like doing the montage about everybody talking about the not Katie, Lindsay Lohan, but was it Regina George?
I don't remember anything about
blonde,
it. I just
but
remember I
there's
saw
like
it.
she punched me in the face and it was great. Like that's how the media is. Like they were with like Obama and Biden because they didn't like how Trump was so mean. It's like Biden is not always. He's an orny or is that how you say orny old
He's
man.
just a mean old man.
Yeah, he's a mean old man, and so he gets very cranky when he doesn't have his appropriate nap time, and when they start pressing him on questions, he'll make jokes at their expense. And it's not just the media, but when he was running on the campaign trail, he would insult people who didn't see eye to eye with him either.
Yeah, but the media is kind of. Let me put it this way: Trump and Bernie were anti-establishment.
Yeah.
And the media doesn't. The media kind of protects the establishment as well as kind of pushes the establishments towards more. We'll just say globalist, Marxist globalist policies. We'll just put it like that. That's what it seems like to me. So, and anybody that stands against that is kind of vilified or just like Tulsi Gabbard. She's a Democrat. She's not a globalist. She's not a establishment Democrat. She's more like an old school one. She's probably more like a more like a principled, maybe Clinton era Democrat per se, and they from they sidelined her at least, didn't give her time.
Wouldn't let
were
her run
host-
ads.
I think they might have been mildly hostile towards her.
Oh, they're hostile.
From
Hillary Clinton like called her a Russian agent or something, and
Yeah,
the press
yeah.
ran with that. And she was what was crazy to me when before like she became a presidential candidate. I saw her like on Tucker or something, and I'm like, and I was concerned. I'm like, if they run someone like her, she could probably she'd give him a run for his money. But I mean, she's young, she's pretty, she's got that cool X-Men hair, and she see and yeah, and so it seemed like she still had it policies and stuff that were still left that I wouldn't agree with, and was more progressive than people gave her credit for. But she communicated in a non-hostile way, and she's reasonable on a lot of things that make sense. Like she's talking about like Title IX protections with women in sports, for example, something that she's been talking about recently. So when I saw her, and she served, and she didn't want to be all in all kinds of different wars and stuff. And I'm like, she could be a real contender. And to me, it didn't make sense why.
It didn't make sense why they wouldn't want her. It makes no sense at all. You say you're pro women, but you didn't run this person with no baggage. You literally ran Jezebel against Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. Like Hillary Clinton had all kind of baggage.
Hillary Clinton would have been before. I mean, talking about Biden.
Okay, but I think she ran against Hillary Clinton, didn't she?
Tulsi?
Yeah.
I don't think so. No. No.
Oh, she didn't?
No.
Okay, but
Hillary came for her like she did. But no, she popped up. I didn't really take notice of Tulsi until like it was like midterm season, I think, and I'm like, who is this? But no, but I watched other presidential debates in 2015. Mm-hmm. So no,
she wasn't there.
No, Hillary was the only woman, and then the rest were all white guys.
What? I was just like, why didn't y'all pick Bernie? That's what I was like, because Bernie stands for more what y'all stand for. Why didn't y'all pick Bernie? Y'all pick somebody with the most corrupt background to run against Donald Trump. Why did y'all do that?
The only person who's probably more popular than unpopular than he was.
And why did y'all pick that person? Bernie was anti-establishment. He stood for what the Dems tend to like. What I believe the Dems stood for, that's what he stood for. I mean, every politician has baggage, but he had a whole lot less baggage than she did. Mm-hmm. And y'all picked her. And then with Biden, everything y'all say y'all hate about Trump was wrong with Biden. Like, he had the most racially charged statements out of everybody. He had the he's clearly
he still makes racially charged comments.
I mean, the whole thing about blacks. I mean, Mexicans, you're a diverse community, but black, unlike the African American community. I was like, why did we even have to be brought up in that statement?
We didn't have to be brought up in that statement.
It just said all he had to say was. And this is around the time where he said, if you ain't vote for me, you ain't black.
Yeah. Just one thing after another. And as a matter of fact,
and he never said anything anti-Mexican.
Yeah. People get mad when you mention that Kamala Harris was like picked, obviously, because of her background, ethnic background. It's like, dude, Biden made so many mistakes that a collective of people, black people, got together, signed a letter, and said, you have to pick a black woman. And that's what he did. But like, I believe Charlemagne and other people who signed on said, you have to pick a black woman. And that's what he did, because all he said was he's going to pick a woman. And there are other choices that would have been better, like to help him win the Midwest and other areas like that. But he went with Kamala, someone who did not do well at all in the presidential debate. I mean, not the debates, but the primaries. Had to drop out. She got ghetto stomped by Tulsi. And the only person who probably got more ghetto stomped was Biden when Kamala went after him.
She did fry him.
She did fry him for sure.
But the thing about it is, what was more important? The most important thing to him was getting the black vote.
Yeah,
and without that, the Democrats are effectively powerless. And this is one thing Republicans do not seem to put too much emphasis on, is getting that black vote. Because as long as the blacks vote 90%, 80% Democrat, that where we move is going to turn blue.
Yeah.
And so, and if you want this place to stay red, if we move there, it's not going to be red anymore if we move there, because we vote 90% Democrat no matter what. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So, regardless of how much we may say that we may not want to be in the area we're at, and we move to a red place, we're going to vote blue no matter. That's just what's going to happen. So the Republicans just got a lot of work cut out for them in engaging the black community, point blank, period. Whether it's not about whether the attacks are justified or not. It's just about, we just got to do, the Republicans just got, I don't really like to say we, but the Republicans just got to do that legwork. Otherwise, the conservatives is just going to be lost. The Hispanic community is not don't vote Democrat like that. They do vote. I mean, they should go after the Hispanic community. Don't get me wrong too, but you're going to really need to go after the African-American community hardcore.
Yeah.
Otherwise, and just all the minority communities. Otherwise, it's game over.
Well, I wrote I don't know if I wrote. I did a long form video, I think about an hour, discussing why black people vote vote Democrat, because they try to use that as Republicans must be racist because black people don't vote for them. I'm like, no, there's particular reasons why we don't. And I broke it down for a couple different reasons, but I mean, one of them is as far as ethnic groups, like black people consider being black part of their identity. White people do not say I'm what, identify that it's not part of their identity.
Not necessarily.
And then
no.
it's like Asians, and then this is Pew Research did it. So there was data and stuff that I showed. So the least likely to do that is whites, then it's just Asians, and then it's Hispanics, and then black people is just overwhelming a majority, maybe 85% believe that being black is part of their identity. And Democrats have done a good job. And that's not just Democrats who are politicians and in the culture and so on. They all relate it to being Democrat as being part of being black. And so that's part of the reason. And and I also said the perceived policies, because they lie about what they actually want to implement. Mm-hmm. They'll say we're going to do one thing, vote for us. Vote for the Georgia election, vote for because we're going to get you an extra $600. They did not give everyone an extra $600, which I did not understand, because they spent a lot of money, and they didn't just give everybody another $600. That was insane to me. Why lie about that? You spent so much.
But you know what? It doesn't matter. Like I said, all you got to do is just get people to believe it long enough. And if there's no consequences, they accomplish what they accomplish. I mean, a few people gonna get turned off, but all we need is enough. Mm-hmm. I mean, I used to lie all the time, so I know how it goes. I used to lie so I could go outside. I'm like, yeah, I'll go outside now. I may get caught, but at least I get to go outside now. And then when I get caught in the lie, I was like, at least I got to go outside. So it accomplished what I was going to accomplish. I just needed you to believe this or not be able to prove me wrong. Because sometimes it's about to not being able to prove you wrong. Like the other side was like, okay, I know you're lying, but I may not be able to prove you wrong now. And I can't really accuse you of lying now. And that's all they need. That's all you need. And then, but with these people, they're just like, oh, we just believe them. And then once they get in, it just goes down the memory hole. It's just like, oh, whatever, boo, 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 boo. And then they'll make it so you would justify, well, at least this person, regardless, at least this person is still better than the other person. Because that's why we vote, really.
Yeah.
We vote because we believe that this person is better than the other person, not necessarily that they're going to fulfill everything they said. Because as long as they're better than the other person, then that still justifies me voting for them over the other person.
That was definitely a reason why people voted for Biden in droves.
And that's why a lot of people voted for Trump, too.
Over Hillary, yes. That
over Hillary and Biden. Like a lot of people.
That's true, because there's a lot of people who didn't I mean, Trump has no record as a politician. People say things on the campaign trail to get elected, and there's no evidence to if he was going to try to fulfill the things that he was talking about. Now there are people who, like Ben Shapiro's, like he's not going to do all these things. I'm just not going to vote for anyone, and he lived in California, so who like it wasn't going to affect the state.
Right.
So and then he's like he's not going to pick a judge off this list and stuff. So he had to wear a MAGA hat one day when he did a show. He's like, I'm happy to be wrong. I'm really happy that I'm wrong and was wrong. And Trump is a much, you know, he criticized him a lot when he did things
Right.
that were wrong.
He criticized him a lot.
But he was like, ultimately he deserved re-election, and he, you know, did an episode explaining why. And so people can and do vote for people for fulfilling their promises, but a lot of people don't try to fulfill their promises. So many people said they're gonna put the embassy in Jerusalem. That was some people always like change their mind about, and Trump held it off for a little bit, and people were upset, and then he was like, no, I'm going to keep this promise, and he did, and they said there'd be all this chaos, and there wasn't.
But yeah, like I said, it's just, even if somebody doesn't fulfill their promise, if they think that because remember, you're making a decision between the two things. So it's just like, I'm making a decision which one is better of the two things. Even if this thing is not great, even if this thing is bad or horrible, if the other thing is worse, then it justifies my decision because the other thing is worse. And I think that's what a lot of people miss. It's like, okay, just pointing out why somebody's bad doesn't tell me why the other side is worse, if that makes any sense. So, you know,
no, you're right. I mean, because Obama, he said, well, he was running, when he was candidate first time, he said if he doesn't complete all the things he wants to get done or should get done in his term, he won't run for re-election. That's what he said. What was his campaign slogan second time around? Because it was like, vote for change. And the second time was forward. We got to go forward. We got to finish the job. It's like, no, you said you wouldn't do it if you couldn't get it done within the first 4 years. That's what you said. You didn't say that I'm going to run another. But of course, that was a lie from the get-go. So why would you tell a lie like that? Why would you bother even telling a lie like that? I guess because he can. But I still don't understand why you would tell a lie like that.
I don't even remember that. And a lot of people don't. And a lot of people, even like I said, even if he lied about that, they still thought he was better than the other dude. To be honest, I didn't vote for Romney or Obama. I didn't vote that time. And if I had to do it all over again with McCain, I probably wouldn't have voted. I voted for McCain thinking that he was better than Obama, and I'm not even sure that would have been true. Because you remember the reasons why Shapiro said he didn't want to vote for Trump, because he was going to move the party in a certain direction.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought. I thought Romney was going to do that. So that's why I didn't vote for Romney. And looking back at McCain, I think that would have probably been what McCain would have did too. He would have moved the party in a direction which I'm not necessarily in favor of. I'm just,
I wouldn't be confident that he would have won a second. If he had won, that he would have got reelected and Hillary Clinton would be president right now, probably anyway.
You think so?
Yeah.
No, it would have been her time up because she would have ran against him the second time. And then he would have,
if he had beaten Obama, he would have been president for 4 years, and then Hillary would have had her shot to run. She wouldn't run probably Obama twice because you usually don't run a loser, and I think, probably would have won.
Okay, that would have been 2012. So she would have been, because Obama was 2000.
Yeah.
So she would have been out of office now. Okay, and then it would have been whoever would have been. Okay. Okay.
And it is I just think he probably wouldn't have won. And it is hard to be an incumbent. So I think she would have had 4 years and 8 years.
You think she would have ran against him as an incumbent?
No, not against Obama.
I'm just saying, no, if McCain won, do you think she would have won against him?
Yeah, I think she would have won against him.
Okay. I didn't think she would have ran, but maybe you're right. Maybe you're right about that.
That's my
hypothetical
situation. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think a lot of how the country was moving anyway, people were really upset about the situation in the Middle East. People were getting exhausted. And obviously, I think he would have just kind of kept pushing for it, which Obama, did too. But people have a higher disdain, and the media has a higher disdain for Republicans. So
Right.
They
have a disdain for
and then-
Republicans
and
while
then-
they're running,
and
but
then
then
he
after they get
also
out, they don't.
wasn't very conservative either. So he would have had not the support of
Right.
the base anyway.
Right. You're right. You're right.
So that's my
You're right.
my theory in the world that wasn't. In the world that wasn't. Oh my gosh, Hillary Clinton. I wish I had the photo. I was going to do a TikTok about it. So it's in my phone, but it's not on here. But Hillary Clinton became a chancellor of some college or something. So she had her robe. She's like, called me Madam Chancellor. And so I comment under it said, better than Madam President. So I got a couple likes on that. But when I hear Chancellor, I always think Palpatine.
She is like Palpatine. I used to call her that. She is. How many people are known to disappear or die because they're associated with her some secrets of hers being revealed? A lot.
Yeah.
It's too many for coincidence.
There's I don't know if you've ever seen the show The Crown on Netflix about the royal family.
I heard about it. I haven't seen it.
So there was an episode they did about like there was a spy. I think maybe was he a Russian spy maybe? But he was like the royal art explainer. I don't know what his title was or something. So they found out that he was working for the enemy, but they didn't want to expose it and make it a big embarrassment or whatever. So he basically stayed on his position regardless of the fact of that. So I'm watching that like annoyed. I'm like, they couldn't have Hillary Clinton this man? Like, I'm like, Hillary Clinton would never.
Because I remember hearing a story where somebody got 2 shots to the back and people was just like, it was a suicide. I was like, what? How do you shoot yourself in the, like, how? How does that happen? I don't understand that.
Tina said we just did a whole what if episode of politics. With better animation style than Marvel Comics. Because I don't know what's up with that decision they had with that stuff. But anyway, back to the border thing. It's really ridiculous. So there's people, agents upset, of course, that Biden and them are pandering. And that's just what he does. Like you said, they move how the media moves. He did the same thing with the Hyde Amendment. At first, it was like, oh, it's a really deep religious Catholic view that he has. He believes in a woman's right to choose, but he just doesn't want taxpayer dollars to pay for it. Twitter went crazy. Not even like real life outside, like constituents, like doing real polling, like just Twitter, just the people on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I only supported the Hyde Amendment because everyone had to, because it was wrapped up in the bills and that's how you got stuff passed. It's like, oh, so it's no longer a deeply held religious belief. Okay. So, I mean, Biden totally, they do move with the media. So he's telling the story that he believes people want to be, that the media wants told, and he believes certain people want to hear, because people like, even if they're upset, people, I don't know, they get a high off of being upset sometimes like that.
Some people like being angry.
People like being angry.
People
I mean, you saw that last year a lot. You really saw it a lot last year. So people are willing to jump on really dumb things like that. Like I heard that story. I'm like, that doesn't sound remotely real.
People like anger is a drug. People like being angry.
Like, and the Jussie Smollett thing didn't sound real either.
People like being outraged, and people. I heard some people talk like people need a new purpose now or whatever. I think some of that's true, but I do think some people feed into negativity. Some people like looking at negative stuff of people who they don't like. I found myself having done that before. It's not. That I think that is part of human nature. That's why I think that negativity sells more than positivity.
That's true.
Why? Because people, it's just easier. It appeals to our base nature. You know, what's the lizard brain? Fear, anger, and
that is really true. Because I'll do, like, if I do a TikTok that's like, God said this, or positive or something like that, it might get a couple views or whatever. But if I do you guys are so stupid, blah, blah, blah. I don't say stupid, but y'all tell them off in my elegant kind of sort of way. And then people are like, yes, queen, all up in the comments. See, like, they love when I tell somebody, I'm like, I can't just be nice because y'all don't want me to be nice. That's not don't move me like that, but
Mhm.
that's what they do respond to. Like people tag me one video, they want me to go off on somebody. I'm just like, I kind of sort of agree with the person you want me to go off on, but okay. Like I didn't do it.
But that's just
That's what people want. See, it's
It's
a
our
human
pa-
thing. It's not
yeah.
right, left. It's a human thing. It's a very human thing.
I've
So
seen it in myself, so I can't really just say they, but I do think there is some I do think some of it might be a self-righteous thing. I do think that which ties into people lack a sense of purpose and want their whole a new civil rights thing because of a whole like the civil rights thing had a legitimate purpose to it. And
Yeah.
it was part of a movement that did some a lot of positive things for a certain like African Americans, and now they want to be part of um, something that does something positive for a group of people. They want that thing, and generations of the past are looked at as good because they took part of this positive thing, like free people from the Nazis or whatever. So they have their little war on something, whatever that is. So I do think that's part of it.
I definitely do think that's part of it.
But I think another part of it is just people feed off of negativity. And then a lot of people, when they get in that angry mode, they can't see themselves because and when they can't get when they're getting that angry, but when just people want to get emotional, they can't they get blind for certain facts, and then they gravitate towards others, and then that's how you get a lot of the confirmation bias, and that's how you get a lot of the justification because people are when they're angry at somebody, you know, if you told a lie on them, they'll just be like, well, that was overall, it was true that there was a bad person anyway.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the whole
Punching Nancy or
almost kind of like the Derek Chauvin thing. Like, okay, let's grant you that Derek Chauvin is a bad human being. Let's just grant you that. Okay, he stood on a person's neck, or however he stood on a person,
shoulder and neck area. Kept
longer than he should have. Okay, that longer than I believe he should have.
Mhm.
Right, because he was just like the dude is not moving. You still on his. Okay, you should have been off. If he said he couldn't breathe, why are you on his back at all? And he's handcuffed. But anyways, regardless, when it was like that juror came, it was like that it came out where that juror was like an activist of sort of,
Yeah.
and people was just like didn't even care. I was like, this why didn't they care? Because there was already they didn't care about the precedent that it was going to set. Okay, that it was a lot worse than what just happened because the precedent that set was going to probably hurt a lot more people than Derek Chauvin himself hurt.
Yeah.
People was just mad, and it was just like, okay, you know, it wasn't like even this is just like this is messed up. We need to see if there needs to be a retrial or not. But if it's going to be messed up, it might as well be messed up to this person. I can even understand that. But it was just like whatever, you know, this was okay because he was bad, and it was just like.
Yeah, even people on the right were like saying that too. I'm just, well, I guess only people on the right would be saying that because everybody else would be like, the right thing happened anyway. And there's people who believe that you should be social justice and get on juries to be able to change outcomes like that. And it's obvious to me. I mean, I watched quite a bit of the trial, the full like closing and stuff. His lawyer like poured his heart out trying to change that outcome, but people can't. It seemed like it was always going to end up the way that it ended up. But
and I'm not even saying whether
you're not even arguing the verdict.
I'm not arguing the verdict at all. I'm just saying that if that juror being the way it was if it's not enough in any other situation to change things around, then fine. But if it was enough in any other situation to call for a retrial, then that should be a retrial also. Like I said, it should be held to the same level of standards as everything else, because that stuff might end up happening to you or someone else that you know, where it was an activist judge and activist we'll just say juror, and your friend is on trial and he's found guilty, and maybe he was innocent, but he's an activist. But now we set the precedent of, because public opinion is one way and there's an activist juror, now it's okay to perform injustice because it's what the mob wants or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's the problem I kind of had with it. So which goes back to the point where when people are mad, they stop caring when people mad, they want to redirect their anger. It's not about principle. They use the principles to justify their anger. It's about redirecting that anger in a certain direction.
Yeah, and then they throw their principles out the window because
Right.
there's no consistency in their arguments.
The consistency is it validates my anger. That's the consistency.
That is the consistency. That is true.
So yeah, there is principle there, but the principles aren't necessarily what they're arguing for with their anger. The principle is whatever validates my anger is the principle. Is what's right, and if it goes against it, then it's wrong.
And
So
to go back what you said about how people need like a reason, like people. I mean, it's so easy for people to be warriors. We call them social justice warriors, but they feel like they can save the world because of what they put a black square on their social media platform because they tweeted out hashtag Black Lives Matter, and then they feel like they've done something. And it's like, no, situations like with police brutality, and so they take a lot long. You got to do more stuff than give money to Black Lives Matter, which
yeah, that's just
especially like that particular group,
yeah, that's just.
But that's how people got that little rush, that high of I did something, and it's the same thing like the people who were demonize you for not wearing a mask. Like there's a video that was viral, someone following a woman in Target because she didn't have a mask on. And he's like, you're endangering people. And it's like, why are you, you're a man, she's a woman. Why are you harassing her, following around? And other women are telling them to leave her alone. Like, what, if you're so scared, it's a hysterical, and they feel self-righteous about it, which doesn't make sense because if your mask is to keep you from spreading it, can't keep you from catching it.
Right.
And you actually if you can't spread it to someone unless you actually have COVID. So there's no reason to have a self-righteous attitude about it. Because if you have COVID, why are you out anyway?
Yeah, they
So there's nothing heroic to feel about it. It's just a mask.
They're like the modern day Pharisees. They're exactly like the modern day Pharisees. They're like Pharisees. Remember the Pharisees in the Bible?
Yeah.
They're exactly like that. They're self-righteous, straight out of that, swallow a camel. They'll crucify somebody doing the right thing in the same way that they're supposed to be trying to do the right thing. Like Daryl Davis, have you heard of him?
Mm-mm.
He's somebody who is converted 200 KKK members.
Oh, yeah.
And even these anti-racial prejudice people came at him like he was doing something wrong because he was associated with people with racial prejudice. But that's how you cure people with a problem, is association with the problem. What else? Yeah, they're overly judgmental. They want people to validate themselves. They wanted Jesus to validate himself. Like, show me a sign, because raising the dead and healing people is not a sign enough. But, they're blind. They're blind leading the blind. They're just like modern day Pharisees. They're exactly like them, and they will crucify. And like modern day Pharisees, they will crucify legitimately just people. They're like Pharisees were inherently unjust. That's what they were. And Jesus didn't like them because they was hypocritical and unjust, and they couldn't see themselves. He says, you strain out of that swallow camel, but you have the plank in your eye and you can't see. You have the plank in your eye. You're trying to get the speck out of someone else's eye. They're just like modern day Pharisees. That's what they are. But not only that, they are made hysterical by the media. And Tim, I've sent you this before a while back because there was I forget what it was, a Twitter account or whatever Tim Pool was following, and he was talking about when like the media coverage of race just skyrocketed. A few years back, it just skyrocketed at a certain point. And I just noticed with certain people I was around, they started automatically talking about, the conversation started to shift, and people and their attitudes about certain things weren't the same as it was before. And it's because the media is programming people. It's just like in the 60s when the sex, drug, and rock and roll movement came into came from who? The musicians and the media and stuff like that. It wasn't the politicians. The politicians wasn't pushing that. But I'm sure there's politicians who agreed with that, but they weren't pushing that. It was the media who was responsible for that. So I think the media is making people very hysterical about race, very hysterical about various other things. And that's how, I was just like, the only reason that you're that excited that Joe Biden, like, it was when people ran out in the middle of the street, literally super excited that Joe Biden won. They were literally hyper excited about Joe Biden won. I was like, this is a problem. Why are you excited about I understand why you would rather have Joe Biden. Okay, maybe I don't need, but rather having Joe Biden win is one thing, but excited about Joe Biden winning
Yeah.
is a whole going out. You just neglected your mask and everything else to celebrate Joe Biden winning. What are you celebrating? What is he going to do differently, better than this other guy did? Do you even know? This dude just had a bunch of peace deals, Trump, in the Middle East. Why are you excited about this dude who could barely, who's has a he is mentally deficient compared to what he used to be. Okay. And you can argue how smart he used to be, but he's not even like where he was before. Okay. And he's clearly on decline. And you're excited that a handicapped person, that's what he is. He's our first impaired president. Okay. And I'm not even trying to be funny. That's just, you can tell he has a physical problem. He does. And you're excited this dude is going to win, the dude with the most shady racial prejudice past. I can't use the other word. He has the most, that dude you're excited about. That dude you're excited about. You're in the streets partying because that dude won. That's because the media.
Yeah.
There's no other reason. It's not because of his policies. You're not excited about, oh, he's going to do this. Like, what did he say he's going to do? He was in the basement the whole time. What did he say he was going to do? He just blamed Trump for mishandling the virus. And I don't think he handled it the greatest either. But what was he going to do better? What has he done better? And people still like hardcore for him too. He's still going to get probably 85, 86% of the African American vote. He's still going to get most of the Latino vote. He's still going to get a lot of the SJW vote. But you know what is this guy? How much worse could? Never mind.
It's so bad for like only being like 9 months. And he said the other day, you know, he's like, I'm not complaining, but I had a mess to clean up when it came in. I'm not complaining, but it was like, no, you are complaining. And I hate when people talk about their predecessors anyway. Trump, not so much because he wasn't actually in politics before that, but I still don't like the complaining because it's like you campaign to take the job. Like you don't keep talking about stuff that when you voluntarily wanted to, you campaign for the position.
Right.
You came to fix stuff. So don't even like talk about the other guys who can help it. But Biden will talk about, you just inherited all this, like as if he wasn't engaged in politics for like 47 years.
Longer than I've been around.
You know, longer than we've been alive. So it's crazy. And you know, Ben Shapiro, he was like, Joe Biden's gonna be the luckiest person to ever be elected because the pandemic is like on the decline. They have vaccines you know, that's going to be rolled out. The economy should be bouncing back because we are in an artificial depression. And so people should be going back to work. And so there's all these like there are problems, but they already had like solutions in the work. And then he just came in and just made everything so much worse, including the pullout with Afghanistan. And it's crazy.
That was on him. That's not even on the media.
It's totally on him.
That's not even on the media either. That's on him.
And then he also talking about the border security, the border patrol, saying that he's going to hold them accountable for something that didn't even happen. They weren't whipping those people, but he fired those. They can't use the horses anymore. He said they can't use the horses, which they use those horses when they patrol the river. There's a reason. That's crazy that you're firing the horses, and they're going to investigate the border patrol agents just doing their job. And he was more. He had more fire and passion about that than he did going after people who bombed those people, those civilians in Afghanistan. Because they said they had bombs in their car, and it was water canisters that the man was bringing home to his family because there was a water shortage in the village.
It's about deflection. So it's not about the crisis at the border. It's about them doing wrong. He has to own the strike completely, right? Mm-hmm. But the border, he can be like, well, it's somebody else's. I'm management, but I can shift the blame on my employee, and I can reprimand my employee, and I can still give people what they want. Mm-hmm. So he can pay more attention because there's nothing about the strike he can do. If he fires the people, then he's going to have to admit he was wrong and That's just what I believe. But the whole border thing has been a media talking point for a while.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why he's really has to address the border because of that. And he has to address it because the African American community, because originally I saw conservatives and non-liberals point this out to liberals like, y'all ain't got nothing to say about this.
With sending the Haitians back. Yeah.
Yeah. They say the Haitians back, but they not sending because I was just seeing this all over.
Dude,
people who
I
are
read
not.
they're gonna put them in put people in Guantanamo Bay.
Oh, okay. But I just heard this amongst some black conservatives, but a lot of people who aren't really liberal or blacks who aren't liberal or conservatives who don't really buy into the system like that. They were just like, okay, Dems, y'all had a whole bunch to say about this other stuff. Why don't y'all say anything about this? And then it kind of like he had to hop on it because of the optics and his certain aspect of his constituents that is vital to his success.
Yeah.
He had to get on it because if the blacks didn't point that out, he probably wouldn't have did anything about it. Truth be told.
Well, they're running into issue with this. I think there's also an issue with the forced vaccinations and stuff because I saw like polling breakdown of people who are like vaccinated, ready to get back to life, normal life. People who are like resurrected. I'm sorry, misspoke. There's people who aren't. There are people who are vaccinated who are a little scary, but I think that's like maybe a smaller percentage. There's people who are like unvaccinated and they're like, I don't care. And then there's this other percentage of people who are unvaccinated, but they don't mind more restrictions. And so there's probably a lot of the black Democrats in that area because they don't want, there's a lot of people who don't want to be vaccinated that like as far as like ethnicities, black people is the highest ethnicity that is unvaccinated, but you'll see them going around wearing a mask if they're still a little scary or whatever. But Biden is saying we're losing patients. You got to do this. But at the same time, you have people who are like, no, we don't want it. So he's pushing really hard. And there's Black Lives Matter was protesting the lockdowns in New York.
Lockdowns or the
mandates. The mandates.
That's a little different.
The mandates. I'm sorry. So
I don't know if they care if business is shut down. I know they care if they might care about the mandates. But
it's a mandate. So I think it's interesting because I don't know who's going to give first.
Well, Black Lives Matter will just, it doesn't take any effort to keep making noise. And they're not, and the thing about it is, why should the Dems give? Because it's like, where else you're going to go?
Yeah.
No,
that's true.
Even if, it's like, where else you're going to go? You're not going to vote for a Republican. You're not. What you going to do about it? We put ourselves in a position like they can do anything they want to us. It's
but do you think there's a possibility that there could be like Biden starts backing off if there's enough outrage? Because like when they announced it, like the Postal Service had to, like all the federal employees had to be vaccinated. I went to, somebody who works at the post office and we're like, what's going to happen? And they're like, the union said they're not doing that. And sure enough, I looked it up and like, oh, the union said they're not doing that. So
the unions, are they exempt or they just say they're not doing it?
They said they're not doing it. I think the Postal Service. So I don't believe they're exempt, but they said they're not doing it. They said we believe in the vaccine, but we ain't making people do it.
Well, he's not. Here's the thing. He's they're going to it's like this. They're making our rights. They're making it so our rights is sort of, how can I put this? Our rights are everything that any attack that goes at anybody who supports taking rights away, therefore, whether it's Fauci, whether it's anybody else, anything that's about taking our rights away. So the whole mandate, which makes no sense. So you're going to say over 100 employees, you have to do it. No federal employees have to do it. No migrants have to do it. But people with 99 employees and under don't have to do this. But it's to keep us safe. Okay. Why? And certain people are being targeted. There's certain people it's certain people that you can make this about, which is Trump supporters, and people, which is really, I'm not equating the two, but it's really about people who believe in their rights.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these people who just don't want it aren't Trump supporters. They just believe in their rights, but they're making it about Trump supporters.
I've seen people who said I am vaccinated, but I'm not showing my card anywhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they don't believe in it. I was talking to somebody, and they had a convention that they wanted to go to in a big place where they do conventions. I guess I won't say it, but well, it was gonna be at the Grand Hotel up in Mackinac. I don't know which conference it was, but they wanted to make everybody show vaccination status, and they're like, I am vaccinated, but I don't think I even want to go to the thing because I don't want to have to show
Right.
that I've been vaccinated, because I don't believe in that. And it wasn't the Republican conference, FYI, just so you know. Like, it wasn't a Republican conference. It was another kind of conference. But
I think the Republican conference would do something.
no, they would not do something like that. but people know I just went to that conference. So no, I just wanted to make it clear it wasn't that one.
I'm not saying that because they have all that principle. I'm just saying that they don't want to piss off their constituents.
Oh yeah,
like
for sure.
That's why I believe it. So it's not like I'm saying the Republican Party is good. It's not that I'm saying that. I'm just saying they're probably just like the Democrat Party. There's certain things they're not going to do to piss off their constituents.
I think if there's any time to really fuss and complain and do something about the government overreach, because it amazes me. I think I knew a lot of people were sheep or whatever last year, but the amount that we just decided to take was just extraordinary to me. Like all the arguments you'd get into with people about having churches shut down. I don't begrudge someone who I guess had it shut down at least for a little while as we were trying to figure stuff out and made accommodations, but people would get so mad at other people who would have it open. And some people, like, if you think I'm stupid, that's one thing for having it open. But why aren't you like standing up for people's rights?
They think they're trying to make our rights associated with selfishness, bad person, and the R word, because you can't really use that on YouTube. Racial prejudice. Okay, like you heard of the Kyle Rittenhouse situation, how he was defending himself. They made that about race, and that was really about self-defense.
Yeah.
When the people were protesting the lockdowns up in Michigan, they made that about racial prejudice instead of about people standing up for their rights. But when the other protest was going on, it was okay. Okay, so when somebody stands up for their
governor
right,
was there.
The when they stand up, I mean, but you know, when BLM and Antifa be protesting, when their governors around, the media isn't hard on them like that.
Yeah.
You know, even I saw pictures of some of the people who were being jerks towards nurses at the protest. You know, they were yelling at the nurses or whatever. But now nurses are standing up for their rights and they're firing nurses. You know, it's not. They're making our rights about being a bad, like you said, being a bad person, Trump, and racial prejudice. Okay, I want to use the other word, but you're not really allowed to use that on YouTube. So, you know, they can take all our rights in the name of that, in the name of security. Okay. And really our rights is to protect us from the government. The entire purpose of having these rights is to tell the government, you don't have the right to do this. And this is to protect us from you. But they want people to just want people to associate protecting your rights as you're an extremist, because that's one word, a conspiracy theory person, a racial prejudice person, and or a Trump supporter or something like that. And they're going to take our rights away in the name of that. Just like the border, they made that about racial prejudice instead of the right to national sovereignty.
Yeah.
When they went out, you know, when they censor certain people, they make that about, you know, they always make things about, they always do character assassinations whenever they want to take away, whenever they want to do something dubious like that. And then people go along with it because they're emotional and they don't have strong critical thinking skills. They don't say, well, is this really about this? Is this, I mean, at what point will I say the government has gone too far? Nobody ever answers that. Not even Republicans, truth be told. No, it's like, when do you?
I think it's too far when they start telling you what they can and cannot stick you with. Like
that's way too far.
I think that's way too far. I think there's somebody that Tim Pool had in his podcast, and he said, "My rights are more important than your life. It's no contest, and they're more important than my life too." Like they have to be. And obviously people die for them. So they are
Right.
more important overall than our lives. They're worth laying down your life. So what, like, coming
Because if
together
you
and
don't lay
protect them.
down your life, they will take your life, and you will have no rights also.
Yeah. So
And then on top of that, with this new hokey pokey technology stuff, it's a brand new technology. And I was reading the CDC, and I was just like, you saying that? According to the CDC thing I saw, because it was a CDC website, and it was just like, as of September 20th, 7,000 plus people have died from this. Okay. And I'm like, but yeah, when one person died from taking fish tank cleaner, y'all was really on that. Okay. And if you know anything about chemistry, this is 7th grade chemistry. If you add one atom to something, it changes the whole composition of the atom. Like O2, right? Oxygen, room temperature. No, H2 at room temperature is gas, right? And it helps flames. I think it's explosive or whatever. But H2O is water, is a liquid at room temperature, and it puts out fire. It's a totally different thing. So if you just change the molecule a little bit, it changes the whole dynamic of it. But you're talking about this fish tank cleaner, and then you're saying one person died from this fish tank cleaner, therefore this drug is can't be viable because somebody took fish tank cleaner the wrong way. This drug is not viable. And various
they painted her they were Trump supporters and they were Democrat.
Yeah, that you
who
see what they mean?
donated to pro science type stuff. That lady,
And they're not even-
man,
they're not
she
even-
probably
they're-
did somewhere with her husband.
They're not
It
even
makes sense.
They're not even they don't even promote anything that's not the bad. That's not the
The jab.
the jab. They don't promote anything that's not that. They don't say, well, maybe you can do this, consider that.
They're so mad that Joe Rogan lived.
The horse dewormer.
Yeah.
They had to frame it that way. They couldn't say, well, this is just not effective. Even if it's not effective, it hasn't killed 7,000. Never mind. They have, oh my gosh, I'm sorry about that. But they haven't killed that many people. It's just
Yeah, well, let's segue to Biden. And this is like a video that he get cropped and they put, like, he addressed the nation and he put this video like under his official account. So we're going to respond to this.
The Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, they've completed their independent scientific review. And based on that review, the majority of Americans who were fully vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine are now able to receive the booster shot 6 months after they've received their second shot. Those eligible include, in addition to meeting the requirement of 6 months after the second shot, those people are 65 years or older, adults 18 and over with certain underlying health conditions like diabetes and obesity, and those who are at increased risk of COVID-19 because of where they work or where they live, like healthcare workers, teachers, grocery store workers. That group makes up 60 million Americans who are now eligible for a booster with 6 months after.
Yeah. So the reason why the FDA and them did it's like 65 and older, and I guess other caveats and stuff, is not just blanket everybody. They voice concerns about people who are younger because of the risk of myocarditis. There was a kid, 13, not too far from here, who died in his sleep after getting his second dose. And of course, they still had to do the autopsy and stuff like that. So they won't come out and say that it is, but he was a healthy young man who died after getting the second shot.
I knew somebody who died like a day later. One of my friends who was talking about how one of his family members died right after his they got the jab, and they don't hype any of this stuff up on the news. They don't fear, remember, it only took one story of the of what Joe Rogan took and what the other person took, and they hyped it up all day. There's people dying quite often of this, and I'm not necessarily saying it's not safe.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is just thousands of people are passing away from this, and they're not hyping none of these up on the same level.
Yeah.
Not one. That's a problem. And there seems like no matter if you want to take something other than the jab, they are very hostile towards anything other than the jab. I was looking at there was a study where they were showing how like Israel was shooting up in COVID in the 19 cases, and the United States was shooting up in the pandemic cases, and how India was staying low.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy was just like, what is India doing different than these other countries? Because apparently the jab doesn't necessarily stop these cases from rising. And these places are very highly jabbed. So what's the point? And then he showed that India is using, I guess India is passing out a lot of horse dewormer to their people. I guess. And that, I'm not saying that's the only factor or that's the determining factor, but that's something to consider. And we know we don't hear a lot of this stuff going on in African countries where they have a lot of fish tank cleaner drugs available to them.
Yeah.
So, and anything that's and you're not even allowed to talk about that stuff on YouTube.
Hydroxychloroquine, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's so effective that years ago, Dead Zone did an episode about it. Like there was like a COVID, maybe COVID was because they said SARS such and such. So it was like a COVID type virus that infected people. And if it's amazing, it's eerie, especially for a show that's about telling the future. Just how
oh yeah, I love
that
show.
They had the response, and they're like, that's that won't stop. He's like, hey, but it suppresses the enzyme, and then you like passed out and woke up and he's fine. He's like, oh, you solved the pandemic because you brought up hydroxychloroquine. It was like, and when would that show come out? That was years ago.
You was a kid,
and so
you was a
I remember kid. Watching on USA like Sunday nights and stuff. So, but
because I was in my 20s, so you had to be a kid.
So and it's not that these people could tell the future, but the research was out there, and the writers of the show was very well researched. Just looking at stuff from like the CDC and so on, they were able to craft an episode. They could basically tell the future. So
they're hostile towards anything that's not the jab, and that's a problem.
Well, I heard Joe Rogan say that they can't get emergency use if there is like something that's a viable solution. So they can't get. So,
but the problem I have with them, it's not the emergency use author. It's not the jab that I have a problem with.
It's the force.
It's how all the stuff surrounding the jab. So first, when Trump was coming out with the jab, you had Biden, you had Harris, you had the governor of New York talking about, oh, I'm not going to take it because Trump's behind it. Okay. And now all of a sudden your conspiracy theory, if you don't want to take it. And now
not just take it, but get the booster shot.
Do the booster shot every 6 months. And then on top, like you're going to be something out of the outer, looking like some out of the outer limits after the while, after getting all those shots every 6 months. And then on top of that, the shot it's not even like a traditional jab where when you get the jab, you're not even worried about getting the whatever anymore, because people are still getting it and dying and spreading it. So but it's not even that the jab is not as effective or brand new brand new. It's just how they're so hostile for any other treatment, and how big tech is promoting any other treatment other than the jab. And they're trying to force it down your throat. It's not that the jab it's not that it's the jab that like you're just having this option is available to you. I'm fine with that option being available to you. No matter how dangerous that option is. If somebody want to take it, as long as you do your research. They're even hostile for you saying, I want to do my research. Like the whole Nicki Minaj thing.
Yeah.
I heard somebody had swollen testicles. I'm gonna do my research. That's what you do when you hear that. Maybe that's not from the jab. Maybe it wasn't.
Yeah.
Maybe
people did report that on VAERS. I mean, they have. I'm not saying that's confirmed or whatever,
right?
Because people need to report stuff on VAERS. So I mean, so people did report it, but that's probably that story was fishy, obviously from Trump, because the person, it was. But they could have just talked about ha, this is silly. But they were so mad at her. Joy went after. I mean, she said you're spreading misinformation that leads to people dying. Like, How am I not going to get offended? You out there claiming I'm killing people. Like, first of all, if you listen to a rapper giving medical advice, you got more problems anyway than the COVID.
She wasn't giving medical advice.
She wasn't. She
just said,
if you read the thread, she's very much just having conversations with her fans, and that's how a lot of celebrities view social media. It's a way for them to interact with people. They don't have to wait to go to a concert or a Comic-Con to see people face to face. They can react on social media. It's just very much just a conversation, and people believe that people should be more responsible with their platforms because she had a big following. Perhaps it's true, but she's still a human being. She's still a human being. She can have a conversation with people, but she didn't advocate for anything other than you make your own decision.
She straight up, okay, first of all, that was a deflection. She was just questioning. The problem they had wasn't that she was giving medical advice, because if she said go get a jab, they wouldn't have a problem with that, and that would be medical advice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have a problem with medical advice. They don't have a problem with that. So that's a bold-faced lie. They said you got a problem with that, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that she questioned it. All right. Now the fact that, okay, say for example he didn't have swollen whatever, right? But there's been worse side effects than that.
Yeah.
And y'all don't want to talk about that. Y'all using this as a deflection from the worst side effects. You don't want to talk about people who have actually died from this. Okay. That's worse than having swollen whatever. Okay. Or people young and whatever just dying from it. You seen that Project Veritas was just that lady didn't want to take it. And then all of a sudden she's no longer with us. You know, the first Project Veritas video. Did you see that?
I saw the first one, but that doesn't sound familiar.
Like she was just talking about, she was crying because
oh yeah, I did see that one.
Because like the nurse didn't want to take it, but
she took it and then she died.
She passed away. And then it was just talking about how they don't even report everything to who they're supposed to, which I believe, because it's probably, I believe that I believe it's hard to report everything. I believe there was loose in how they reported the
I heard people who work at the hospital and people who work at the morgue, like when all this first went down, about how much they were over reporting
right
the COVID, people dying with COVID.
Right. And they even said if they have COVID,
someone like who worked at the morgue, they got there and people were like, why are they saying this is a car crash? What does this got to do with COVID? Like
but there was, they said it on air, like if you have it in your system, you're still supposed to kind of report it like that, from what I remember. But with the whole, if someone died of anything really, of a medical treatment, I do understand that the paperwork will be kind of a little bit extensive, because you have to do a process of elimination. Yeah. Did they actually really die from this? And I could see that being a little bit underreported. But the way her attitude about how it was being underreported was just like, man, they just really it might be way worse than we think it is. But I'm still not against the option of the jab. I'm just against how they're just so hostile against people who want to just look for some alternative. Like, we can't have an alternative, and these alternatives that people are suggesting have not been known to cause that are known to be completely safe. And I don't even trust medicine like that.
Hydroxychloroquine is cheap
and safe.
And then did you see in Florida how Biden is limiting the supply of
monoclonal antibodies?
Yep.
It's just about, we want to force you. It's just like they want to take your rights away. That's what it's about. We want you to submit to us and take your rights away, and we're going to get the mob to force you to take your rights away. Oh,
that's what it seemed like a lot with, like, in Michigan, how lockdowns were, and the more people tried to resist, the more mean Whitmer seemed to get. Now, I think, like, they're not forcing mandates or what. I think they just passed a bill or whatever that she said or it's going up the chain, and she's doesn't plan to, like, block Republicans as they do it, as far as, like, mandates and stuff goes. But I think she wants to be reelected. And I don't know, donors might have also said other stuff to her too. Who knows how the
she doesn't seem like she's going along with everything they go with. She don't seem like, I can say this, like when she blocked that.
She made a lot of dumb moves last year because she could. I mean, not dumb for her politically, but dumb just because they didn't make sense. Like, you could go out in a canoe, but not a boat that had a motor. Like, when stuff like that happened, that's when Republicans were, because people were very high compliant at first.
Right.
Like you'd have to tell people not to go to the mall. People weren't going to the mall.
Mm.
Like people just weren't doing it. So, but once stuff got stupid, people were like, we can't travel to our other resident. Like when that kind of stuff started, that's
when
when
she
they
blocked the
started.
hydrochloroquine, but to her credit, she did allow it again. To her credit, she did allow it to be sold in the state again. But when she stuff like that, when you block the when you block the hydrochloroquine from being sold here in various ways, it was just like, why are you blocking
The
that?
Democrats censured another Democrat because she heard Trump talk about that drug. She took
Oh, the
it.
black lady.
Yeah, she took it, and she says it saved her life.
Yeah, she's
And
just
then
credited him for that.
then they were upset and they censured her.
And some actors were saying that too. Actors were saying that it was making their situation better. But yeah, it's but yeah, I don't think she's going to like.
Someone in her comments said that they took ivermectin, worked great. Some other drugs prescribed by frontline doctors. Yeah, they have an agenda. Obviously,
They have, it's evil. It's straight up. It's just like,
it is evil. And you know, I've talked a lot about the jab and COVID and the lockdowns, mandates. It's not that I think it is likely that you'll take it and you'll have an inflamed heart and die in your sleep. I don't think that's likely. It can happen. And I just would like people to be informed especially when they super market it to kids. Like there's a really big account on TikTok, and he said he wanted to do a debate with like a doctor or something and talk about COVID and stuff. And he said the reason why if TikTok, if their audience was just mainly like older people, he would probably recommend it or talk about it in a positive light. But because it scales to like younger audience, he covers it more neutral because he wants people to know about is this a risk worth you taking with you being a young, healthy person versus you could take it and possibly have a reaction to it and maybe not die, but be injured from it. But it is possible that you could die. So, but they're not telling people that they have like different pop stars go to the White House. They heard Nicki Minaj say what she said. So they're like, will you come to the White House? And then they said, oh, it was a phone call, which I totally believe they invited her because they've done that before. I mean,
but regardless if it was a phone call or not, you still didn't want to get on live with her.
Yeah. Well, they really wanted to.
That's the point.
They want her to come into compliance with them. I don't think that she should do it.
I think
but she was saying, okay, fans, tell me what you want me to ask them. And they probably didn't like that either. And I think that she alleges that Twitter ended up suspending her Twitter claim that they didn't do it. But she went on a big Instagram rant about it, played on the show.
She was like, she's what happens when you even question it. Because she didn't even say the jab was bad. She
said she was probably going to take it so she could go on tour.
She didn't even say the jab was bad. All she said was she heard something, which she probably did hear it. Whether it happened or not, she probably did heard it. Okay. She didn't say this is what happened. She said, I heard this was what happened.
Yeah.
So when you hear something has happened, what do you do? What is the appropriate response? To research, whatever that means. That could mean ask a doctor. That could mean when the White House calls you, you can ask him, is this a side effect? That's research, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So, and everybody got mad because she put the jab in a bad light. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Or it wasn't. And that is not even the worst side effect that the jab could have. If that was the worst side effect that the jab could have, whatever. But but they was using that to deflect that the jab didn't have negative side effects. Like I said, the jab is known to kill people and do worse. Not do worse than kill people, but do worse than the whole swelling of the testicles. Mm-hmm. It's known to do worse than that. Yeah. Okay, that's verifiable according to the CDC. Okay,
there's people telling me like that no one has died, but I think there was someone higher up who like said that, and so people start repeating that. And I'm like, what do you mean? And so well, tell me one person who's died. So I shared that article of the young man who's 13 and I think it's Saginaw who died. Mm-hmm. And they're like, did you read the whole article? It says they still have to do the autopsy. I'm like, don't be daft. Like he was.
The CDC says when I read the website, it said as of September 20th, 7,899 people have passed away from what I remember. Okay. Now Vera said it was 5,000. Okay. But it's thousands. Okay. We'll just say it's thousands, even if it's not. Okay. 7,000.
Is
So,
that reported, or was what they verified after? Because I don't see them like jumping on the train really quick to verify all those things with the autopsies and stuff. Because there was a report months ago, like really early on.
because I went to the website and looked at the website for the website itself, not an article about the website, but the website. Oh, I'm sorry, the website itself. About that, and that's what I thought I read. I could be wrong, but I know they weren't claiming that nobody had any side effects.
Well, I know some time ago I looked on the CDC talking about the people who were getting the myocarditis, and it said it was like 7,000 something people who had like that was like reported with VAERS. But even like with the stuff they were able to confirm, it was still like it wasn't like maybe 7,000, but it was like 1,500 something like that. And I'm like, that's still more. The number that I saw that they had of people who got it is still more than the amount of that target audience who had died from it, the COVID period. So at least in the US,
it's more than the horse dewormer and the fish tank cleaner had killed. It's more than them. And like I said, even if you wanted to, I just have a problem with you being hostile. They're so hostile towards people who are hesitant to the jab, and they are. When you have mandates like this, you're hostile towards people who don't want.
And the mandates don't make sense either, because
the mandates are making it. That's what that is.
The mandates do not make sense. Like if you were, why have people who aren't vaccinated get tested every week when other people can get vaccinated?
Why
you still have it?
Right, the people who get the jab.
So why not test everybody?
Right. Why not test everybody? You just want to test the people who aren't jabbed, but you're not going to test the people who are jabbed who can get it, because you can get jabbed and had it before and still get it again, from what I hear.
Yeah.
So really, everybody should be getting tested if you're really that concerned, but you're not. You're hostile towards the people who don't want to put this in their body. Okay, that's what it is in particular,
And
that's
people
a
like
problem.
Nikki were like, why are you so hostile towards it? Because it's making people more suspicious. Like I just had it's not that I think I'll take it or die or something. That's not really why. Like people ask me, why aren't you getting? Because I don't want to, and it's just really that simple. It's just really that simple. I'm not someone who goes out and gets a flu shot, and I'm just not.
I don't get flu shots.
I'm not one of those people. Like I would just rather assume the risk, and maybe there's a data point that you can show me to be like, oh, I'll do. Especially if it was like reverse with the effect of like kids or something like high, that they were very susceptible to it. I think the reaction of the public, even the people who are skeptical about it, would be like, oh, we gotta man up, we gotta do this, protect the kids and stuff. But then they act like kids are in danger. Like, wait, it's good for the kids because they're not vaccinated. It hasn't been approved for 12 and under, so we gotta make sure that we're all vaccinated and protect the kids and we with the mask. But it's not a danger to the kids.
The kids is more in danger from the regular flu, aren't they?
Yes.
And they're acting like
And I think Fauci said like the opposite. And people were like, "Why would you say something like that?"
Yeah, he said that on. He did say
like
that.
because people were like, "This is like just verifiably false." And there's an interview I found of Fauci a few years ago when they said, well, "What if there's some kind of like viral outbreak? Should we like all wear masks?" He's like, "No." He's like, "No, just like exercise, don't drink too much, don't smoke too much.
Exercise, I think there might
like,
have
take
been
your vitamin, like just like normal things that you would hear like Joe Rogan say." Like. So
I think exercise is known to help it too. I think I didn't really read the study, but I think exercise I think this is just something to look up. I've heard that exercise was good for that. I don't know if I'm not saying why you have it, but it's good for dealing with, because we know that there is associated with health, compromised health, and that killing you. So I heard that there might have been a study with exercise associated as having people who exercise having a positive effect on your outcomes with having it. This is not necessarily a replacing the jab or anything like that, but you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, it hits people somehow they can't do anything. But there was a doctor who testified somewhere, but he mentioned how he's really troubled by how they used to treat people with COVID and giving people too much, like treating them too long on the ventilators and stuff like that. But also like how they would just kind of leave them be and not have them do anything. And it's like that wasn't good for them. And when they started like changing their procedures about how they dealt with people who had COVID, they saw radically different outcomes with the patients. So that's another thing to consider too. Like people were making a lot of mistakes because they didn't know what they were dealing with at first,
Right.
and now they understand a lot better ways to treat it. So it's not only that we have more ways that are treated with like the antibodies and other things like that, whether it's either and other medicines, but we have an understanding of how to treat
Right. Before
people.
they didn't even know about the horse dewormer, the fish tank cleaner, or nothing like that. And I said this before when I was explaining this to your sister. She was just like, "What are the lockdowns supposed to do?" Like in the very beginning, I was like, in the beginning, I was just like, okay, they were supposed to be doing. She was like, nobody ever really explained this to me. She didn't ever tell me she thought this was a good explanation, but she didn't really say much after because I was talking to Gina, and I was just like, well, if this is really to flatten the curve, because that's what they said. That was the first goalpost. We're going to do it 2 weeks so you can flatten the curve so the hospitals can get the resources to be able to deal with this. Okay.
Mhm.
And I was just like, 2 weeks. Okay. Then they keep moving the goalposts on that. Then, we start protesting for your rights. Then you're the devil. Then on top of that, now we're going, okay, now you got to wear your mask forever. Now we're going to stick something in you. Now it just keeps on and on. And then now, okay, now we're going to ask, now that you're going to need not just 2 shots, but 3 shots. How many shots you going to need? And then it's just they keep moving the goalposts as far as the rights they want to take away. And certain people are just okay with that because it makes them feel safe. And
Yeah.
the problem is we should never feel safe when the government takes our rights at all. It should be a point where it's just like, okay, when you're going to, like, it's a problem if you don't give our rights back.
Yeah.
It's just is, because the whole point of having rights is to protect us from the government. And the government has been, I've heard Joe Rogan say this, but this is just effective. This is true anyway. But the government has been one of the most dangerous things in human history as far as killing people and things of this nature. Like there was a University of Democide study conducted by the University of Hawaii, I think, or something like that. And they talked about how that in the 20th century, the government has killed the people's governments has killed 262 million of their own people. This is not by war. This is just them killing people. So it's so whenever the government just proposes taking rights away, it's just like and people are okay with it. The problem is people are okay with it. People are not asking them, like, really.
Not only are they okay with it, there's people actively helping
Right.
them achieve that
Right.
end. And it's like, it just blew me away. Like I said earlier, with Christians be like, no, we need to not go there. They're so angry. I'm like, can you at least stand up for their rights to be able to go to the church? They're arresting people or finding people. They're sitting in their cars just listening on like the low band radio at the church, not even in the building, and people like went and did citation. I think that was that in Texas? That might have been in Texas.
I didn't hear that story.
They did arrest a pastor, I think that was in
Florida,
but I think it was maybe the car thing maybe happened in Texas. And I'm just like, Texas? Really?
I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked. There's a lot of blues going there because it's a financial boom.
There's a lot of blues going there for what? But yeah, but still, like,
I'm not shocked. If you got a big city, you're going to have a lot of blues. And when you got a lot of blues, you're going to have like conservatives aren't really that principled. I consider myself more conservative leaning, but conservatives aren't really that principled themselves. To be honest, most people just aren't principled themselves.
well, I think, well, that could be a whole different discussion in itself. But like, I don't think people even really have a good grasp of what they even say what that even means when they say that, or like what exactly are they conservative? What are they standing up
Right.
for? And there's like big debates between like, conservatism and stuff anyway. So people believe that they are. And there's a lot of people who decided to jump on that train because Trump called them conservative, people like Trump. And they don't know really how deeply rooted they are in those particular principles and haven't read a lot of different people and so on.
They're not really
They haven't,
most
they
people,
haven't fleshed out their principles.
yeah, it's like they believe the government's supposed to force other people. Most people believe that the government's supposed to force people to do what they believe. That's kind of how they see the government.
Yeah.
But whether they're on the right or the left, that's kind of how they believe. And I heard someone else say that, and I kind of believe that myself, but I just didn't know how to put it in words. But yeah, most people believe the government's supposed to force other people to do what they believe, and that's effectively how it is. And that's why that's really the only driving principle. And if you and when it comes to principles, people, you gotta, it's like you gotta if you haven't fleshed it out all the way, then people can make you compromise them or things like that. Like with the Bible and with a lot of Christians, when you have Christians like we'll just say not as a political thing, but more conservative, or certain types of Christians, they know they're not going to bend on certain things.
Yeah.
But most people who don't know what's behind the principle, they're not going to really stand on the principle properly. Kind of like the Pharisees didn't know how to stand on certain principles properly. Therefore, they was all over the place. Like that's why they were straining at it and swallowing camel.
Yeah. Well, back to like, no, I totally get what you're saying. Like,
I just use that as an example.
when people bring up like the abortion topic and they'll give like the worst case scenarios, they're trying to get you, like people say like pro-life people, they're just arguing from a morality issue. Like that's not why. Like scientifically, it's a life at conception, and I believe it's a rights issue. That's why I argue it. Do you think it's easy, like when someone brings up the worst case scenario, to say I'm not moving on my position because I know what science says and I believe that they have an unalienable right to life, and you're up here talking about all these different scenarios where this happened to mother, this happened, this, it's to look you in the face and say, I'm standing consistently on my principle because that has not changed. Your circumstances that you're saying, you're trying to scale the value of someone's life based on whatever scenario.
It's based on principle. It's just like the same principle that people hate racial prejudice for. It's the same principle that I have a problem with abortion for. You're devaluing a human life. It's a human. That's why it's valuable. That's why we're valuable, because we're human, and no arbitrary reason makes you less valuable because you're human.
Yeah.
And if you can devalue human life because of its size, its level of development, its location in a woman's stomach, or its dependency, then that's known as the SLED argument for Stand to Reason has that as part of their little thing, whatever. That's a whole different thing. But if you can devalue human life for that arbitrary reason, why not color? Why is that? What makes that legit?
Yeah.
What makes racial prejudice legit for what makes you say that I have to show this one person justice, the same amount of justice for another for any other arbitrary reason? That's why I say, there's different versions of racial prejudice, which I'm not going to get into here, but that's a version where you say this life is not valuable, inherently not as valuable, and inherently not as deserving of certain rights because of some arbitrary reason here, i.e. race, and then you have this other life not valuable for this arbitrary reason. And most people don't understand the principle behind it. That's why they'd be like, well, they could bring up scenarios like that.
Yeah, and I think it'll make you break. It even there's people on the right who flex, who change on it because they'll make exceptions, like with the I mean, I believe if the life of a mother isn't that's different because
right
because it's
about saving a life.
But people will bring up,
it's kind of like the self-defense argument.
But if someone brings up like what if the mother was sexually assaulted, it's like, well, that doesn't change the value of the child.
You can't kill the cow after it's born because it's sexually assaulted. You can't kill the baby. Like if the mother gives birth to the baby, you can't say, well, the baby was a rape baby, therefore we can get rid of it. If the 2-year-old
people, oh my gosh, people say that all the time. I have to have that argument all the time.
So you could do it.
They'll say you want the mother suffering as she's carrying it, and have to deal with that trauma her whole life. I'm like, so she just kill her child, and then they'll say, and then the person has to suffer with that, and they'll say, I know someone, and they've gone through heck. I'm just like,
it's just like the whole trot out the toddler.
Do you want to kill him right now? Because
that's why they use Santa also use the trot out toddler. So you can kill a toddler because he was a victim, because the mom was raped for having that. You can kill the toddler for that, not the person who raped them. But you can kill the toddler for that. You can kill the toddler for it being a product of incest.
Mhm.
You can do that. No, you can't. Just like you can't just kill a person because they're black. All right. And
But there's people on the right who will, because they don't want to look like the bad guy. But it's like, if you can't argue
on
that that's
principle,
still alive,
right.
then you're undercutting
the,
your,
argu-
your,
the
the,
whole
ar-
argument.
the whole argument.
The whole
The
argument.
whole argument.
The whole argument. And a lot of Christians don't understand that either. A lot of Christians don't understand that principle either. A whole lot of them don't.
And the viability argument, like,
You can't kill a person when they're on a respirator. You can't just take a hammer and smash it on the back of their head when they're on a respirator.
well, I started saying this, like, because people say, well, like the Texas bill, which it doesn't ban abortions at 6 weeks. What is it when it gets to 6 weeks? Because that's when you can start detecting the heartbeat. And like, it's not a heartbeat because all the stuff isn't for, like, dude, just for real. If the heart is forming, you can hear the sound. So they have to, at 6 weeks, they have to detect it. And if you can hear it, then you can't kill it. That's what it is. But people will say, well, they think they should be able to do it up to that time or 8 weeks or whatever. But why? Because it's developing. You absolutely know what it is. You absolutely know what will become in a very short amount of time. So I said, you're basically like the Terminator going back in time, trying to kill someone before they're too inconvenient and they become too much inconvenient for your moral argument. Or like Hydra in Captain America, like, you know what this potentially can be, so you want to take it out before it's too much of a moral burden for you.
And not only that, that argument, if you're going to hold to that argument, then that means since it's the mother's body, then you can't hold the father responsible. Don't put him on child support because it's her body.
Yeah.
Don't put him on child support. He ain't no deadbeat dad. Because remember, the mother can abort the baby. They can put the baby up for adoption. They could do a whole lot of things. But once she wants to decide to keep the baby, now the daddy could be a deadbeat now.
Yeah.
So if it's the mother's body, then there should be no liability for the father. Point blank, period. Because we got to be consistent. If it's the mother's body, okay, it's your body. You decide to allow yourself to get pregnant in most of the cases outside of rape. Okay, most of the cases outside of rape, you decided to allow yourself to get pregnant. Now, but even then, if it's your body, don't hold the father responsible because it's not his body. It's not. He can't tell you. Man can't tell you what to do, right? Man can't tell you what to do with your body, right? So don't tell him what to do with his. Don't tell you what to do with his stuff. Leave him alone. He ain't a deadbeat. He ain't responsible for that. Don't ask him for anything.
Yeah.
It's your right to choose, and it's right, and he has a right to choose not to deal with it. And even he has to, as a matter of fact, the burden of proof should be on you to prove it's his. And not only that, he has to sign papers to say, okay, I'm willing to take care of it if that's your argument.
Yeah.
That's not the argument where I'm coming from.
And it's sure not my body, my choice when you want government funds involved too. That's
right.
That becomes everybody's issue.
Right.
Once you want their dollars to get involved.
Right.
So have you ever read Frederick Douglass's what is 4th of July to a Slave speech?
Mm-mm.
It is, which the left is trying to use it to undermine 4th of July. But if you actually read it, it's such a good speech, in which he had the good sense to give it on July 5th because he was invited to speak at a Republican event. And he said, I won't do it on 4th of July. I'll do it on the 5th of July. So he spoke up. He talked up the Constitution, said it was great. The founders, did a great thing. And then he made the argument that the Constitution is not pro-slavery, and that people who try to say that it is, and criticize Republicans for giving into their talking points. So I thought that was really good. But he's just laid out a case for, like, slavery is evil, and, like, we cannot be okay with it. Which they weren't okay with it, but just like it seemed like the kind of speech you go to, like a rally, like a Republican rally, like America's great, we love America, yay, USA, chant, you raise your flag, but we're still spending too much money. We're still, like, we have abortion. We have, like, there's things we have to address. So that's the feel of the speech. But as he was talking about slavery, it just reminded me of the kind of speech you would give at a pro-life rally. Because he even talked about how we clearly know that Black people should have rights and are capable because of how the law treats you. Like, it'll hold you to a harsher standard than a white man if you do something. so we obviously believe that you're capable of being held accountable for your actions. So it's not like you're just some dumb human being wandering through life, and that's why you don't want to be educated and all this other kind of stuff. So the way he was talking about how the laws and stuff are inconsistent, it just reminded me of like our laws are obviously inconsistent how we treat the unborn.
Like if you get into somebody kills you with the unborn, you're treated as murder. If you drink alcohol and mess up your baby, you're considered a bad person. But if you abort the baby, you're considered a good person. Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
and then
So it's a long read, but I wonder how long it really took to deliver, but it's a really great read. He even talked about Christians, and he said when they did the Fugitive Slave Act, he said we should have seen that as a assault on our religious liberty. I was like, it was just like all the snaps off, but it also reminded me how you would go off on these progressive Christians and stuff today too. So it was a really great speech. The left like trying to use it as some kind of woke anti 4th of July thing is really outrageous. I got to do like a whole thing when I probably read it and break it down. But
the only thing they have a problem with is the West. They don't have a problem with communism. They don't even have a problem with Marx with his goofy self up there calling black people Negrilla. That's what he called. He's like in the person who wrote the book The Devil and Karl Marx. He was just outlawed how Marx called one of his in-laws Negrilla because he was like half black. Call him Negrilla, but yet y'all have nothing to say about him.
yeah,
Yet you have nothing to say about all the deaths that were caused under these Marxist systems, and even in Europe, these systems that are and conservatives are guilty of this too, calling these systems socialist, which they're not. They're more like market systems with a lot of what's they'll say public I'm not going to say not necessarily welfare, but
social system.
social programs. Yeah, they're market economies with a lot of social programs. Some of them have some more free market aspects to them than we do.
Yeah, we have our tax system is extremely progressive and unfair on balance about how we have the rich paying, and they say pay your fair share. They pay more than their fair share.
It's like
and
20.
it's like Scandinavian countries, they got everybody paying high taxes. They have a more equal system with that than we do.
But they have like conservatives and the right and the left have called them socialists, and that's not necessarily what they are. They're market economies with more social programs, which is what they are. If you want to call it, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with you calling it that. But I mean, when like conservatives wanted to call it socialist because they wanted to down that, and liberals want to call it socialist because they want to make socialists in more positive light, and it's really just a market system with more social programs. Some of them had to lighten up on some of the regulations so they can grow. Okay, some of them have some things that we will probably want to adopt, and some of them have some things that we probably don't want to adopt.
Mm-hmm.
We can always learn from somebody else, but they use this as a thing to promote actually calling this calling this socialism is that is socialism is not what it is. And and it's leading us in a very wrong direction, because people look at them like, oh, this is what we want. Like, oh, this is what socialism. This is socialism working. I was like, this is not socialism working.
Yeah.
They grew when they were more free market, and now that they have more social programs, some of them are being stifled, and some of them aren't as are less free market. I mean, some of them have more free market aspects than us, and there's various other things which I'm not going to get into right now. But yeah, they're like these people actually that want to implement. But some of these people, I really do think that they want to implement full-fledged
communism.
Yeah.
No, I think that's obviously the way, and I think there's plenty of people who don't, but they're so willing to go along with how race is used, and a lot of people pushing it
as power privilege.
That a lot of people have an agenda with communism, which that was their goal back in the day. If you read like Color Communism, Common Sense by Manning Johnson.
Oh yeah, did you? You read that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So no, really, really good book. You see that's their goal. That was their play, and people are still using it today. I mean, Nicole Hannah Johnson.
Did you hear him? He has a little speech on YouTube. Manning Johnson. He He has a little speech on YouTube.
Oh, no, I haven't seen it, but like the 1619 Project lady, she like defended Cuba and was like they don't have racism because of, I mean, which that isn't true, but like, but she stuck up for them and stuff to protect communism. And a lot of these people, when you talk about critical race theory, Joe Reed had Kimberly Crenshaw, who's one of the people who founded critical race theory, and she's like, I don't want to ask this question because I don't want you to think I'm stupid, but it's not some kind of Marxist agenda or anything like that. And so she went ahead and she explained what critical race theory is, and you know what she never did in that whole interview segment, which was like 10 minutes long or maybe more than that? She never denounced that it had any ties to Marxism, which you can obviously look it up with five, not even 5 minutes, and figure that out. But the media would still stand up and push it because
Manning Johnson talked
because
about
Republicans don't like it. And that's why they push it, and they're willing to do that, even though not all these, I don't believe all these people who are pushing this stuff are literal communists and want to see America become a communist country. There's plenty of people. There's enough people who want to.
But they just see, okay.
But they're willing to sacrifice it all for a narrative, a good story, to assume power and whatever. And if we're collateral damage and America's collateral damage and the American dream is dead, they don't care.
It's just, but here's the thing. I think, okay, first of all, you know, you had I don't know if you heard of Yuri Bezmenov. He's on YouTube. He's a socialist defector who talked about how they was just going to use division to bust up the nation. He was.
Oh, you know, I think, yeah, you sent me a video.
Yeah,
I watched that. Yeah.
Yuri Bezmenov talked about it, and there was somebody else who talked about active measures. He wrote the. I'll send you the book later. He talked about how active measures, where they use words and give them different meanings, and it's part of subversion and things of this nature. And you know, when you change different meanings, when you use words and give different meanings of words, people go along with agendas they don't realize what they are. But I think a lot of the race agenda, people see racial prejudice as the biggest enemy.
Yeah.
Okay, they think racial prejudice is the biggest enemy. And here's the thing about human nature. The reason why people can take, like, if I decided to give everybody cupcakes, but some people 2 and some people 3, right? You decide to give nobody anything. You're equally stingy to everybody. Everybody has less cupcakes under you, but people can tolerate you better than they can tolerate me because I gave them an uneven amount. And that's kind of how people are. People can take it's like people can take worse treatment if it's dealt out evenly than lesser bad treatment if it's dealt out unevenly. So Marxism, even if it's not as successful as the free market, is still even, and then people perceive it as fair. It's just like when people, all they know is poverty, there's nothing to revolt against. But when they see a bunch of people richer than them and they're poor, they can see this is unequal.
Yeah.
They'll more likely see it, oh, it's unfair. All right. Now, people will have a problem with you and me, like you not giving anybody anything and me giving me uneven, but people have more problem with me because I wasn't fair in how I gave them stuff, if that makes sense. So people have, so the pet peeve about the whole racial prejudice thing is like you're just, one thing is because of American history and how racial prejudice had a lot to do with what kept us back. And it was horrible what they did to us. That's one. And number 2 is the uneven aspect of it, that, you know, if you're going to treat everybody bad or good, just treat us all the same. And if it's as long as you can give in the combination of those 2 things, I believe is why they can hype the racial prejudice thing. And plus they're just hyping up race and things of this nature, just make people hysterical about the racial prejudice thing to justify anything else they do.
Yeah. Okay,
we're going to burn down these buildings in the name of fighting racial prejudice. It's just like the whole what was the when they burnt down that black city, I forget, I can't, it's on the tip of my tongue. It was in Oklahoma, I believe. When they, I think it had something to do with burning down Black Wall Street. It was like
talking about the
I can't remember it offhand, but anyways, there was
Tulsa.
Yeah, I believe so. So the whole thing about Tulsa, when they burnt down the town, the prosperous black town. Okay, that, you know, you had a bunch of people with racial prejudice who did that. Fine or whatever. But now people are burning down towns with black people in it now in name of fighting racial prejudice. And a lot of people don't even care because it's in the name of fighting racial prejudice.
Yeah.
As long as you're fighting racial prejudice, it's okay. As long as racial prejudice is attached to it, it's bad. And that's how they take our rights away. And that's how they get us going along with evil stuff too, with Marxism. Oh, Marxism eliminates racial prejudice. But if you listen to Eldridge Cleaver, when he talked about when he went to these Marxist countries, he was just like, he was happy to come back here, and he didn't. And it was messed up here for black people, because Eldridge Cleaver, is a Black Panther, and he was a Marxist, and he was trying to make this country more Marxist so it can be a better country. But then when he visited Marxist countries and he saw the oppression there, he was ashamed to even talk about what kind of oppression he had over here, because it was so messed up over there. And that's just that Marxist system is like, not to sound overly exaggerated, it's highly controlling. And if you hear how they talk about what happened to them under these communist countries and how they had to watch their back and how it was all these shortages, and how the government was just very nefarious and controlling and very mischievous and conspiratorial in nature, it sounds like the mark of the beast system.
Yeah.
Not to be overly exaggerating this, but it sounds exactly like it. I don't know if you ever seen the movie 1984, but that's what it looks like. It was like propaganda all over the place to make people think a certain thing, and if you had the wrong thing, they made you disappear, and they tortured you, and they re-educated you. That sounds like straight up Satan.
Yeah. I saw a video on TikTok. Someone was like, I think it was Lion King's music, when it was like, Rafiki's like, it is time. And they took 1984 and they removed it from the fiction section. They put it in the fiction section because we're just at a really bad spot. But we talked a long time today, Brian. So, that's not new. That's not new. So not for us, but I'm going to go ahead and start to wrap things up. But I enjoyed having you on. It was a good conversation, and people seem to have enjoyed you. So thank you for coming on, sir. And I look forward to when you start doing this consistently, because you are like a fountain of knowledge in a lot of things, political and biblical, and just the random. Yeah, the random.
I love the
with
random.
your research papers and stuff, and your texts and so on. So to everyone watching, if you enjoyed Black Tea News, please make sure that you visit blacktnews.com and check out different content that I have. Make sure that you follow me on all my platforms, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. My handles are all at Black Tea News. On Twitter, it's at True Black Tea. Please check out the store. We got the GOAT hoodies, which people love. We got I voted for President Trump, and all I got was historic peace deals, border security, ISIS destroy, energy independence, and a bunch of other stuff. And it ends with this lousy t-shirt. I got this Be Better Not Bitter shirt, which is a saying I have to say a lot on TikTok. And the Constitution is a glorious liberty document. That's from the speech that I mentioned, the what is 4th of July to a slave speech. It's a really great speech. So I got that quote from Frederick Douglass, and we got stuff with Black Tea News on it. So please visit the store. You might find something that you really like and something you can get for someone else. Wouldn't you love to be at work using this mug, watching someone across from you just totally lose it, and you just be there sipping on your tea, your as you're listening to Black Tea and watching them just go crazy. I just think it would be great. So you should invest in that and get a couple things. And also, if you would like to support, you can go to blacktnews.com/donate. There's a lot of things that are on the horizon with Black Tea News. And if you would like to help us get there faster, I'd appreciate it if you would consider investing. So go to blacktnews.com/donate, and you can do it via PayPal, or you can just enter in the information. You don't have to have an account with PayPal. I have another credit card thing you can do. That was an option people wanted, so I made sure that I had that available. And I thank you guys. Oh, Australia. Oh my gosh. Good luck. This commenter says they're from Australia. Oh, geez.
A lot of prayer.
Yeah, a lot of prayers to you guys.
I got a lot of people standing up though.
Yeah, I'm glad there's a lot of people standing up, and I'm disappointed that more Americans aren't standing up, or at least
The one place that should be standing up.
the
is
one
not.
place that should be standing. And I don't mean like taking to the streets, but like you saw like in California, people like voted to keep Gavin Newsom, and it's like you look at the exit polling, and it's like no, people are cool with what's happening, and then immediately California and like LA County, they're like, oh, we're doing more restrictions. Oh, you announced that after the recall, huh?
That's
but
what they wanted.
that's what they wanted. That's what they get. That's what they you deserve. I guess who you vote for.
We deserve Biden.
Unfortunately, I suppose.
I think we did.
Yeah, I guess. And it's interesting to see so many conservatives or Republicans who are very highbrow, who didn't want to support Trump. And I do follow some of those pages to see when they complain about Biden. And I'm like, you've known who this man was for 47 years. No, there's no excuse for anyone to be surprised by anything that is happening. There wasn't going to be a new normal or back to the adults back in charge. That's not what's going to happen.
He was going to go with the flow with the woke.
He was going to go with the flow with the woke, but there's other things like the Afghanistan stuff that like that's just kind of true to other stuff he had been saying years ago. I mean, there's people who worked with him in the past when he was in the Obama administration that they said he doesn't like the military, or it seems like he doesn't like them, and that he's been wrong about every foreign policy measure. He can't even take credit for the Osama bin Laden getting captured, because he was against that too. So he's been wrong on so many things, and people absolutely should have known better. So you should have voted for Trump. They should have voted for Trump. So people who were complaining now, I've seen plenty of people who say they regret their vote. Months ago, I think a month into his election, I wrote an article that was about people who had buyer's remorse. And I guess I got to do a part 2 now, because there's plenty of people, especially like I said, these highbrow Republicans who are making comments. Maybe they won't come out and say I should have voted for Trump. There's some people who flat out said that they made a mistake. But there's people who are like I can understand like Meghan McCain, for example, not voting for Trump. He said a lot of bad things about her dad.
Yeah,
I totally understand that.
I can understand.
I could totally understand it. But her mom did go out there and campaign for Biden, like hard campaign for Biden. And and then Meghan McCain's like, this isn't the Joe Biden I knew, like with the Afghanistan stuff. When he had that speech after the Kabul airport bombing, she came out and said, this isn't the Joe Biden I recognize, and et cetera. And it's like, he's been the same man for 47 years. This is the same man who get up and say, I participated in the civil rights movement, and lie through his teeth about that. Who said that he was the best student in college, and blatant, verifiable things you could see that were lies. Who said that Mitt Romney was going to put people back in chains. He's that same person who led the high-tech lynching of Clarence Thomas. He's the same person. Same person.
Yeah, I just feared that he was going to go along with the or along more with the extreme agenda than the other person would. That's what I was really concerned with.
That should have been evident when he decided to flip on the Hyde Amendment, something he'd been supporting for decades, and a Twitter freak out. And people should have known when he started hiring people like Simone Sanders, who used to work for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, that's what flipped me. That's what made me most concerned. Like, these people are going to go with the trend of the woke. It's not like they're like Bill Clinton of 1990, which I would more than welcome that kind of administration than what we have now.
Yeah, for sure. But thank you guys for tuning in today. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And again, thank you, Brian, for coming on. You don't have any like social anything people can follow you at right now, right?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm sure I'll have you back on again because I enjoyed the time. All right. Thank you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.